Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. Today we have just a remarkable human being and someone that I've really enjoyed getting to know through his work and hopefully even more so through this interview. We've got Leon on the show, who is an adventurer, motivational speaker, TV host, best-selling author, and widely recognized as the kindness guy. After leaving a successful career as a stockbroker in London, he embarked on a transformative journey around the world, relying on the kindness of strangers. This quest for meaning and connection inspired his acclaimed Netflix series, The Kindness Diaries, which debuted in 2017. In February 2025, present day, here we go, Leon premiered his latest documentary, The Kindness Within, A Journey to Freedom, on Amazon Prime. This award-winning film explores themes of self-discovery, healing, and the universal quest for connection. And I think I may be a little bit biased, but maybe not. I just think it's a perfectly timed project that is just so needed in today's world right now. So, Leon, thank you for your work and thank you for coming on to this show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we jump into the work and all these amazing topics, I always start by kind of like forgetting the bio that I just read and just stripping away the titles and just asking the same question that everyone gets. And that's just, right now, as we sit here today recording together, who are you?
Wow, that's a great question. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure.
I like that.
And that's part of...
Tell me more.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I did the movie, because I'm not entirely sure who I am. And I'm on a quest to find the answer to that question.
And so tell me more about that. So then I guess I should ask, or what comes up intuitively for me right now is to ask you, from going through the process of creating the movie to where you are now, how has that who am I question evolved or shifted?
Yeah, okay.
Or has it?
Yeah, it definitely has. So I would say that prior to making the movie, I was definitely spending more time in my head. And as the movie was being filmed, as the movie was being edited, as all the promotion was being done, I think I slowly, day by day, found myself living more from my heart, which really is the purpose of the movie, right? It's to bring you back to your center, bring you back to your heart, bring you back to source. And that's kind of what happened to me by doing the movie, which is kind of cool. And a lot of... Yeah, it is, right? I mean, I haven't reached the destination. I guess there never is a reaching of the destination. But a lot of the work I've done, I've taken my pain and I've turned it into art, which is not unique. That's what artists do, right? In many ways. So that's kind of what I've done here as well. And not just turn my pain into art, but hopefully turn my pain into something that people can watch and feel their pain and become better.
Yeah. I just love how, and we're going to get into the actual, like, how this all came to be, just to obviously catch up the audience. I mean, I have a bit of a competitive advantage here, having spent, time researching your past work and obviously watching the movie as well and so forth. But for those listening, I think it's important to set the context around what you were doing before you embarked on this journey, and I pulled a quote from, I think it was at the very early on in the latest movie, and it was Rachel Ray said this, and she said, congratulations for living the life that I daydream about all day long, which I think dovetails really nice to how the movie opens, which is essentially you messaging or having a virtual call with your therapist. And I got the sense of you had lost hope. Like you were at the end, at this point, at the end of the story, you had tried everything and still um feeling a lot of pain. So why don't you fill in the gaps for all of us listening to how does one go? I guess the question is, from being known as the kindness guy and being surrounded by kindness and human connection, which is something I think a lot of us really long for more of, to the point of being, what felt like the end of your human journey, if it wasn't for this project.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as you mentioned, I used to be a broker in the city of London, and this was many years ago. And on the outside, I had everything you could ever want. And that's similar to what Rachel Ray was saying, but we're going to get to that. And but on the inside, I was very depressed. I didn't feel any sense of purpose, and I was just living someone else's life, I think. And I thought that was going to be it. That's how I was going to live, and it was never going to change. And then I stumbled across the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, which is a romanticized version of Che Guevara traveling around South America, relying on kindness. And there was something about that movie that really touched me in a very, very profound way. And to cut a long story short, it transformed me so much that I quit my job and I started to travel around the world relying on kindness. And what does that mean? Well, the first journey I did was I hitchhiked from Times Square to the Hollywood sign, relying on kindness. Then I walked from London to Scotland and back on kindness. Then I went a little bit even more mad, and I hitchhiked from the Eiffel Tower in France, Paris, to Red Square in Moscow. And I did all these crazy things, right? I bought a vintage London taxi and I drove it from Times Square to the Hollywood sign, giving free cab rides to people. I ended up moving and living in Los Angeles, and doing all these cool things, writing books, et cetera, et cetera. But I was also still working in a kind of corporate world. I'd started to run a production company, and that kind of went on for a few years. And then in 2013, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I purchased a vintage yellow motorcycle and I drove it from Los Angeles all the way around the world back to Los Angeles with no money, no food, no gas, no place to stay, nothing. And I got very fortunate. That ended up being a Netflix show. Then we did a season 2. And I bought a vintage yellow Beetle and I drove it from Alaska all the way to Argentina. The car was called Kindness 2. The bike was called
I
Kindness
feel like
1.
that car in Alaska would be that in itself is asking for disaster.
When I arrived in Alaska with that car, I literally thought to myself, man, you've lost your mind. This
Yeah.
is completely insane. It was winter. The road, there's a famous highway called the Alcan Highway, which is, I don't know exactly how many miles, but it's a lot, like over 1,000. And I had to drive that car on sheet ice for over 1,000 miles. It was madness. But we ended up doing it. I completed it. And then kind of things started to happen. I got this Netflix show. I ended up speaking in stadiums, more books. So everything that I'd always wanted, right, was happening.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what Rachel Ray saw. So
Yeah.
that's why she said what she said. However, once again, behind the scenes, things were not as they seemed. And I remember I had a dark night of the soul. I was doing not very well with my mental health. And I ended up writing a suicide note. I'd never acted on it. I never attempted to take my life. But what I did do was I wrote that note and I called my therapist in that moment. And he helped me in a profound way. The next morning, I woke up. I walked. No, I didn't walk. I took my car to Venice Beach. I used to go to this bookshop called the Mystic Bookshop in Abbot Kinney. If anyone is listening from LA,
I think
they'll,
I've
they'll
been
know
there.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great bookshop. And I walked into the bookshop and I saw Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda's book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, which I'd seen many, many times, but I didn't pick it up. But this time I did. So I picked up the book, I opened it to a random page, and in that paragraph it said, he's talking to a soon to be guru. He says, "If you reveal God to me, I will follow you anywhere." So I had an epiphany. I wasn't thinking of the God that lives up in the sky. I was thinking about the God that lives in all of us, the universal energy of love, source, universe.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to India, and I was not going to leave until I found God. And clearly, I've given away the whole movie because I left India because here I am with you. But
Yeah.
that is how I ended up doing that movie. That's kind
It's
of the
fat.
short version.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And you there's for everyone listening, I mean, you say you've given up the movie, but I mean, there's there's so much in there that I actually just started watching it for a second time, that I'm picking up a whole other round of insights doing that. So, please, everyone, because I think there's something for everyone, no matter where you're at in the journey. You know, whether it's a reminder on things that you may know, or linked to kind of the vision and like kind of why you're doing what you're doing, or for others, just really nice reframes and perspective shifts around, wow, there's more out there, and there's different ways to tap into, as you said, this a god or a universal kind of power or belief system, because I think that's what a lot of us are lacking, given religion has really um kind of departed a lot of people in like the fabric of society, which leaves like there's no belief systems. It's like you're kind of just on autopilot, living through life without a higher, guiding principle. And I'm vastly generalizing, obviously, but I see that trend happening out there where, for when you're looking back hundreds of years ago, what there was a stronger fabric. And I'm not saying all religion is the answer to this, but I think what it did do was tie people together with some like fundamental truths or ways of living when times get tough. If you take that away, then it's like it feels like you're on your own, right?
Yeah, that's
What
a
was
very
the
good point.
what was the difference then, Leon? Like you find yourself in the bookstore. Was it was it the next day after the conversation with your therapist? Like, what changed between writing that note to seeing the book and reading that passage that gave you enough inspiration to go and do the project, which seems like this is part of your recipe. If you think of the other, the diaries that you did, there's like this one epiphany, and that it sparks this like massive let's go. It's not just like oh, that's an interesting thought. No, it's we're going to India.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
not leaving.
yeah, I mean, look, that's a great question. With the Kindness Diaries, it happened based, not the Kindness Diaries. The first thing I did when I walked across America, it happened based
Yeah,
on the movie. So it was like a tipping point. The movie was a tipping point. So
yeah,
it's the same thing with the book. The book was a tipping point. It's not like it had been building and building and building and building. And
yeah,
once I had that moment with the movie, and once I had that moment with the book, it was just, there was no going back. It was, I don't know what happens to me when those things happen, but once they happen, there's no changing them. I just go.
yeah. You can't unsee it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
which is
You
great.
can't
I'm
unsee it,
glad.
or you can't unfeel it.
Yeah, yeah. So what was going on though, just before we get into because I really want to get into the actual movie, but for you then, like, I guess what kind of darkness were you battling? in that time where, you left the stockbroker world, which seemed like, this was a path that you wanted to go down, and so forth. And I imagine at the beginning, like, you were feeling the I don't know, the benefits of doing that kind of work. Was it just something to the effect that you were kind of in the machine of the industry, that you kind of sunk back into whatever was going on in your mind or from your childhood? Or was it just that the childhood, some of the pieces of your history were just not processed, or and they just like that those projects were, even though they're different industries, they were just kind of another numbing of what really was going on.
Yeah, look, I think we all feel a little bit broken.
Yeah, well
And
said.
yeah, and I think that that's what was happening to me. And I tried to fix that brokenness by going out and, uh, going down the world of materialism. Yeah. And of course, there's nothing wrong with money. Make as much money as you want. The problem is when that's all we're doing, just making
Hmm.
money, when we're not connected to ourselves, when we're not connected to nature, when we're not connected to our families, our kids, our spouses. Um, I think that's a really big challenge. And most of us, I would go so far as to say, are not connected to those things. And it's only a matter of time, if you stay disconnected, that things will fall apart.
Yeah, yeah. So you have the moment in the bookstore. You can't unsee or unfeel that moment. What's the next, practically speaking? Because I'm very interested in. I think, if you for many, you look at a situation like this, you have an idea, and then all of a sudden it's fast forward and the movie's out. But there's a whole there's a whole journey there that, I mean, we don't have to cover that in detail, of course, but I am interested in some of the key moments or key action items that you had to take to actually get to this point. So what was the next big step after the bookshop?
So the next big step after the bookshop was simply in the bookshop, picking up the phone, calling my director, who had directed a lot of the stuff I'd done, and saying, "I want to go to India to find God. Do you want to come?" And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, "All right, let's do it." Literally. I mean, obviously, the
Okay.
process of that moment to getting to India was
Yeah.
was longer, right? But
Yeah.
it happened in the bookshop.
Wow.
Everything happened there. I remember it very clearly.
Wow. But I guess that longer term relationship to with your director, there was no other question. I mean, I'm sure there were questions after, but in that moment, no other questions were needed. It was like, oh no, we're gonna do this.
Absolutely. We're going to do this. And look, like I said, I had run a television production company. I knew how to create content. I had a team in place. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like, I don't know, I all of a sudden wanted to learn how to make a chair. It was like
Yeah.
I was doing something that I'd done before.
Yeah. So where do you start, Leon, though, like in something like this where, yeah, I know you wanted to go to India, of course, and the topic was there, or the key, I guess, question of why you were going was there. But where, like, how does one start the process of, "Hey, I'll speak to so and so," or, like Gabor's been or is featured in the doc as well, and another, past guest of this show, Cute, Blackstone, he's been on this show as well, is in it. So I'm just curious, like, how all that, and then, of course, the locations and the people in India that you spent time with, what does that look like before you actually go? What's your process?
So basically, I called the director. I said to
Yeah.
him, "I want to go to India to find God." He's like, "All right, let's go."
Such a
Uh, I
crazy
know, crazy, right?
conversation.
Completely insane. And then we sit down together, I don't know, a couple of weeks later, whenever it is, and we start pre-production. So we buy the cameras, we get the insurances, we get the plane tickets, all of this kind of stuff, right? That takes a few months to do, right?
Yep.
With this documentary, there was no planning. So we literally just went to India and whatever happened, happened, right? That was the way I wanted it
Okay,
to
yeah.
be. They did some planning, but they didn't tell me about it, right? So we did that. We then film it. Okay, I'm being simplistic, but this is what happened.
Yeah,
We then
yeah,
film
yeah,
it. We finished filming. Then we go to all the people like Gabor Mate, Kublaks, and Sadhguru, and we ask them, hey, would you like to be in this movie? And they're like, yes, we do want to be in this movie. So we go and film them. Then we edit it all, right? And then after
yeah,
we've edited it, we put it into festivals and then we sell it. And then I'm
yeah.
here on the podcast with you. That's the
Right.
very simplified version of how it happened. It sounds easy. It's not easy. It's easier
No, no,
for
no.
us because we already have a system in place, right?
Yeah,
So we know we have production houses. We know where to buy cameras from. We know who to hire for sound, etc., etc., etc. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, it does, and I guess more so what I'm really curious about it, and I think you kind of answered this, was just around like when you land in India, just where because you could go down so many paths. I mean, there's so many, and I obviously know, there's an editing flow of that obviously you guys put the best story flow together and may not have been sequential in the way you filmed it. But even with that, knowing that, there was really rich conversations and experiences that you guys captured in the movie that I was just curious to see, like where do you even start? It's like, hey, because you can't there's there's not a lot. I mean, maybe there are others, but like I'm going to you throw this in an AI agent. I'm going to India and to find God. Where do I start? I mean, maybe you could put that in there, but
So
right, I'm
that's a
curious. Yeah,
a great question. So I have a good friend who actually he was actually in the Kindness Diaries. I don't know if you've seen the Kindness Diaries, but he was the Indian chap that I met in the street, and I ended up sleeping in his in the slums with him, his two kids, and his wife. And
mm,
we ended up giving him a new rickshaw. Okay, so
okay,
we've
yeah,
become friends. So the first person I went to um, was him, and
yeah,
through him I ended up in Rishikesh.
okay,
And then from
and then it
Rishikesh, I
snowballed
ended
from
up
there.
going somewhere else. That's just kind of how it happened.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Thank
And
you for sharing that.
and each person that I met, I would ask them a very simple question. I would say, "Look, can you reveal God to me?" And if you ask a spiritual person that question, someone who's truly connected, who knows where it leads? And that's why all the questions and the answers that they give me are so beautiful, because it's like the ultimate question. If you think about
Yeah,
it, can you
yeah.
reveal God to me? And if that person says yes, and they actually manage to do it, and you feel it, then everything changes.
Yeah. You know what I loved about hearing or witnessing the answers was just it didn't matter what the background was just the level of certainty in answering. Is like, yes, I forget her name, but it was like she said something like 1,003% or something. Yes, right? Like
Yeah.
just do this. But everyone had something like that in their answer, right? And you were obviously following the guidance and so forth. And it's just I found it, like I said at the very beginning in the intro, that it's just a movie it's an experience that is, I think, so needed in today's time. And I think that's one of the excuse me, the learnings for me is in a time that feels so uncertain, it was nice to feel something else of like pure certainty and also something
Mm,
that we can actually control.
mm. Wow, I like that. That's beautiful the way you just said that. And it goes back to what you said about religion. Like we used to have a sense of certainty for
Yeah.
many, 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 many years, right? And
Yeah.
since that has kind of gone away a little bit, we lack that certainty. And it's interesting because when I was in India and now, there is a certainty behind finding God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it. Because once you find it, there is a certainty of love, there is a certainty of peace, there is a certainty of calmness that no one can take away from you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it can't be learnt from the mind. It has to be
Mhm.
learnt from the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I'm kind of pausing there. That's easier said than done, of course, because even my mind's telling me this right now, like you've got to pull out of the program or the autopilot, whatever that is, to be able to tap into that feeling, right? Who was it at the very beginning? I wrote this down. She said, don't do, just be. And
Nandini.
yeah,
What a
and I was
legend.
like, holy smokes, like
So
there's
simple,
right,
right?
so simple,
Don't
4
do, just
words,
be. All
so
right.
powerful. I gotcha.
Crazy.
Wow. I'm curious, Leon, when you first arrived, what strikes you as, or what do you remember from the experience as one of the first big ahas or insights or lessons that, when you go, I know there were many, but the first one that really kind of, oh, that's interesting.
So the first one is actually not in the film. We tried to put it in, but we couldn't. So I'll explain it. So
Yeah,
basically,
please.
after day 2 or 3, I had had enough, and I literally wanted to go home. So we
Wow.
were in a hotel in Rishikesh, and I was on my way to the director's room, and I was c- absolutely going to go home. I was like, "Look, I can't do this. I'm so sorry. I'm leaving." And as I'm walking to his room, I see an open door. And I'm like, all right, I'll just go in there. So I go in there, and it happens to be a library, a little library in an Indian hotel. Not that many books, right? But I
Yeah.
love books, so I walk around a little bit, and I find this book called The Divine Romance by Paramahansa Yogananda, and the book is all about finding God. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I understand. I get
Yeah.
it. I'm not leaving. Thank you. That was an
Wow.
absolutely incredible moment. I mean, what are the
Wow.
odds of finding Paramahansa Yogananda's other book, The Divine Romance, which is all about finding God? So it was
Yeah.
like, okay, that's it. Because I'm telling you, if I hadn't found that book, I would have gone home.
So what was behind that? Why was it just not working for you, or whatever expectations you had, they weren't being met? Like what was going on?
Sometimes you don't want to be free. Sometimes
Mm,
there's parts of us that wants to stay stuck. And had I come home, I would have stayed stuck. So I needed that little gentle nudge from Paramahansa Yogananda to say, no, you're not going to stay stuck. The days of staying stuck are over. You're coming with me and we're going on an adventure. And that's what happened. It was
wow.
insane. That was like one of the most insane moments of my life. I was like,
Yeah.
wow. There's no other answer to that but to say, okay, I'm not going home. How
Yeah,
can
I
you
hear
go
you.
home after that?
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like, and I think we're all benefiting from this, of course, because the ripple effect of your work is what's connecting us, obviously, and many listening. But like you've had these nudges along your path. I mean, this is the third one you've explained now, and I hope you promise to yourself and all of us that whenever those happen, you follow them, because there's, again, I know it's part of your journey and healing and growth and so forth, but the ripple effect is exponential around the world, and that's a beautiful um, thing to put out into the world, or tool to give all of us. So yeah, keep following those nudges.
I will absolutely do that. Certainly if they're as powerful as that one.
Yeah. Okay, so you continue the journey from that moment. I guess, without giving too much away from the film, of course. Where did you land? Like how, like where are you at today in present day with that experience? And I think the bigger question I have around that as well is how have you continued to live the learnings and the insights and integrate into your regular day? Because I think that's what a lot of us struggle with, whether that is, there's a lot of discussions around psychedelic experiences, there's experiences like you went down. I mean, there are all these different definitions, but it's really easy to get caught up then back in, again, to the regular workings of the world. um then all of that stuff is gone in some capacity, or I guess it's never gone, but it's definitely muted.
So look, the word integration is a great one. And I will say, how did I integrate this? And I'm still in the process of integrating it, right? But you would think, oh, Leon, you went on this amazing journey. You spent months in India. That's where all the integration happened. And you came back and you were just enlightened. Well, no. So, I came back and I was in a better place. There's no doubt about that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. The real integration, and integration is a process, keeps on happening. But the real hard work of the integration actually happened when we were editing the movie. Now, why is that?
Mm,
You talked about Nandini ji saying, don't do, just be. Do you know how many
yeah.
times I've heard that? I have watched that scene hundreds of times, hundreds of times. So every time I hear her say, don't do, just be, it seeps in that little bit more. And there are so many people in the movie who say things like that. Sadhguru,
Yeah.
Kuk Blackson, Gabor Mate, that I have heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So that great moment, that act of integration has been happening ever since I was in India, ever since I left India, every time I watch the movie, and it keeps on happening. But it's a process. And it's just a process that keeps on happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really well said because I feel like we just want to have like the magic bullet or pill or whatever it is around. Like, yeah, you go out and do this project and are forever healed, and life is just rainbows and butterflies at all times. Which I think some of us may say that, but deep down we probably actually know that we don't want that, and it's not it's not, I don't think that's attainable. And you need the contrast of the ups and downs and so forth. But there still is this illusion, I think, that a lot of us grapple with. And just hearing you say, yeah, I did the project, and sure, I came back better. But I'm still, going down the journey and integrating, working on it and so forth. But I think that what I'm hanging on is I came back better, and it was something to shake up the thinking, right? And who knows what that'll lead to next, and so forth. Like that to me is where the magic is in life and just like human existence in general.
Yeah, it's not a panacea. And let's not forget, in the Matrix, Neo was given two pills, two choices, red or blue. I can't remember which one was freedom. I think, was it red? I think it
I
was
can't
red.
remember either.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so let's assume it was the red pill that was freedom. He took the red pill, but things didn't automatically get better. He had to go through
Yeah.
a living hell in order to become free, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
freedom isn't free. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, for
To
sure.
become free, specifically in this world where we are bombarded daily with a lot of madness, is not an easy process. And that's why most people never go down that road, because
Yeah.
it's difficult. Like, remember
Yeah.
what happened to Neo? He had to go through a lot to get there. A lot.
Yeah. Did you find, like, through your conversations with various people in India, did you pick up any themes or insights around how we can be at or live in a better, like in a calmer state, or more at peace while we are going through that journey of accepting that, it's work and so forth and evolution, but that it doesn't necessarily have to feel so destructive, right? Like there's a calmness to everyone that you spoke with around. I think they're all developing and growing, but there's a different energy there that I feel in North America in general, I'll just say.
Yeah. Have you been to India?
I have not.
Okay. So I've been quite a few times to India. And the moment, this is going to sound obvious, but the moment you get to India, you know you're in India.
Okay.
And you get off the plane. Like, if I got off the plane blindfolded and I didn't know where I was and I was in India, I would know I was in India. It's weird, but it's a crazy, crazy place. There's so much chaos on the outside. But I
Yeah.
heard someone once say that although there's so much chaos on the outside, there is a calmness on the inside. And
Mm.
it's weird because in America, it's kind of the opposite. Generally, there's like a
Yeah.
calmness on the outside, generally,
It's true.
but there is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
chaos on the inside, right? So
yeah.
there's something about India, there's something about that land, those people, that touches you in such a profound way that you are forced to open more so than you open here. Now, you don't need to go to India to find God. God is everywhere.
Mhm.
Source, universe, love, universal energy, everything is everywhere. But it's a little bit easier to find God in India because of the people, because of the culture, because of the system that's in place, because of the Ganges, because of all of these things that are geared to within as opposed to without. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, to me, it strikes me as there's something that's hard to be it's hard to describe. You have to feel it, and I think we've all experienced something like that in life. And it may not be obviously linked to finding God or source, but like something that like a picture doesn't justify it, or just words can't describe. There's an energy behind it. But then I do believe that putting yourself in a different physical location as well, and in this case, obviously something that's supportive in what we're talking about of finding that support and so forth, is just more helpful, right? It's like even if you live in a large city, just getting away for a weekend into nature, you feel that immediately,
Yes.
right?
Yes, you do. You do. And that's one of the closest ways to come to a place of God, of love, is to go into nature. Like if there's a forest nearby or a beach or something where there are very few people and you go there and you just sit. I once I once heard a quote from an Indian mystic. I'm going to butcher it, but he said something to the following: I wanted to meet God, so I sat still for 3 days.
Hmm.
Literally, that's it. That's
Yeah.
all he did.
Yeah. Yeah. But we just naturally wanna complicate that
And
and
also, we're
and ma
used to not
and
being
make it
still.
something. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So speaking of that, like, for you, what are some of your I call these mental fitness practices. At the end of the day, though, it's really what you're talking about around rituals or practices just to help still the mind and, reconnect with ourselves and again, like, source, God, whatever energy you're tapped into. What are some of your non-negotiable practices, and have they changed since this project, or
So
evolved, I should say?
one of my non-negotiables is meditation. Uh,
Okay. What
yeah,
does that look like for you?
sometimes I do it guided meditation. Sometimes I do it in silence.
Okay.
30 minutes a day, and it gets me out of my head and grounds me. And I think that's really helpful. Another non-negotiable, which is a system I've used for many years, is if I'm kind of in my head and the monkey mind has taken over, and it happens quite a lot. Um, I will turn on a piece of music that
Mhm.
grounds me, and I will listen to it for an hour and a half an hour, until I'm back in my heart. And then I'll go from there. And it's such a simple thing to do. You literally
Yeah.
just put the song on repeat and you listen to it over and over again. And I've done this so many times. Let's say I'm at my anxiety levels at 90%, right? If I
Mhm.
listen to that song, whatever song it may be, I can take my anxiety level to 50%.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
really simple. Anyone can do it.
Yeah, it's
Find a
right
song.
there.
Yeah. Find a song that touches you, touches your heart, and listen to it over and over again until you are in a place of peace.
Mm. Wow. Is there anything else that's been new or has evolved over the last little while since starting this project, that since coming back from India, where you're like, I'd really like to try this, or hang on to whatever you picked up during the show or the filming and so forth?
Spend as much time as I can in nature, whether it's a
Yeah.
hike, whether it's going to the beach. Again, simple things that everyone can do. And I don't want people to watch the movie and think, oh, how am I going to just quit my job and go to India to find God? It's too difficult. Well, your journey starts with a single step. And maybe for you, the journey is, I'm feeling depressed. I'm going to call a therapist. Or, I have a lot of anxiety. I'm going to go onto Audible and listen to a book about anxiety. That one step. For me, that step 21 years ago was to watch that movie and make the decision to quit my job. That was my first step, right?
Mhm.
So, but your first step doesn't even have to be that bold. It can be something so simple. You never know where it's going to lead. You never know where it's going to lead, but you have to make that first step.
Well, and there's this other, like, as you're saying that, what's coming to mind is there's this. It's almost like this level of curiosity around the uncertainty. Like, I imagine this wasn't in the plan, 21 years ago to go to India and do this project, but it's, but to your point, you took that first step and continue to evolve. And I also imagine you probably, were planning on getting to the point where you wrote a suicide note and had to have that conversation with your therapist, but it all just kind of unfolded in a way that um, has led to what you're doing. And again, like, it's not just for you. I mean, I know it's coming from some of your pain and so forth, but there's just all of us now, this ripple effect. Even the book that you mentioned, I just downloaded on my Kindle as well, and excited to pick that up. There was a kind of a feel. I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to read that as well. It just sounds like perfectly timed. So there's all these little moments, right, along the journey that I think if we stop trying to figure them all out and question and try to see, okay, well, if we do this, it's going to lead here and here, and just come back to just do or just be, sorry, and forget about all the planning and the doing. Because all that reveals itself when you're just in that mode of being and really feeling, right? So where are you at right now, Leon? Like, what's feeling? I mean, this is all very fresh. Obviously, the movie just came out, but I guess how you feeling? Any signs in terms of, like, what feels right for the next, whether it's the next project or the next steps? Like, where are you at?
So it's interesting. Normally, I have a lot going on, but I decided when I started this movie, and as we were editing it, that I was gonna what Nandini ji said, don't do, just be. I was gonna do that, and
Mm,
I was just gonna just be and see what happens, and that's what I'm
yeah,
doing. I have no plans. I have nothing. I'm just doing this movie. I'm promoting the movie, and whatever happens, happens.
yeah.
Don't do, just be.
Has that been has what's helped? Because I feel like that's because I resonate with those words as well, but I also feel like my mind would constantly try to bring me back into the do. And especially living in North America, I'm sure you're feeling it too, like, oh gosh, I should be doing this. But so is there anything that's been helpful for you just to come back to that place of, nope, this is the promise I had to myself, and I'm gonna live this.
So I've done a lot. I've spent most of my life doing, and
Yeah.
I will not do that anymore until
Yeah.
I know where I'm supposed to go. And whenever that moment comes, once I know where I'm supposed to go, then the doing will start again.
Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective. Oh, amazing. Well, I want to respect your time. And just, I guess, one final question is just, is there, if there's a question that you wish I would have asked you, or something you really want to, leave with us, please let me know what that is, and where can we all follow along and watch this beautiful piece of work.
So the movie can be watched on Amazon Prime. Just go to Amazon Prime and it's there. And if there was one question that I would have wanted you to ask, I mean, you asked a lot of very good questions. I would say, to me, the movie is really about becoming free.
Mm,
And Sadhguru says that in the movie. that it's not about God, it's not about heaven, it's about liberating ourselves. And that's why I wanted to do the movie. And that's why I wanted people, and I want people to watch it, because we all deserve to free ourselves emotionally, every single one of us. So really the movie is about freedom.
I love that. Well, and there's a line I wrote down as well, I think links well to that. And I think it was, I forget who said it, but he said, peace is a magnet.
Yes.
And that really rang true for me as well. And just, as a reminder, as we watch this movie, and I hope you rewatch it and continue to implement it. And to your point, you had the luxury of, even though maybe at the time didn't feel like a luxury, but all of the editing and seeing and taking in that content hundreds of times, like programming your mind in a way, or almost stating intentions in a way that I encourage everyone to watch it, whenever you feel compelled over and over again, because there's no downside to doing that. That's what I like about it. It's like that's where you want to be. You don't want to be obsessive on social media, but this is where you could be obsessive, and there's like actually a positive loop that comes out of that. So thank you for following the signs, those little universal nudges, and for you, excuse me, being you and doing this work and because I know it's a lot of effort and a lot of work to bring this kind of project to light. But again, it has such a beautiful ripple into the world. So thanks for that to you and the entire team.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on the show. It means a lot.
This is your before and after story. Instead of imagining a rewarding career in medical imaging, Southeastern College can actually take you there. Prepare for a career in ultrasound, radiology, and X-ray technology with hands-on specialized training, simulations, and real-life experience with the latest imaging technology. You'll be ready to play a vital role on any healthcare team. Transform your life by helping others. Southeastern College. Your future is bright. Visit scc.edu to get started.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass f- So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.